Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Star Wars Lads. Today, we are going to be talking about over 50 characters who could be in Obi-Wan Kenobi when it debuts at the end of the month. But before we do so, please hit that like button down below. Subscribe to the channel for Star Wars content every day of the week. We have shorts and videos coming out all the time throughout the week, so you're going to want to stay up to date with Star Wars Lads for all of that Star Wars content, as well as continued Obi-Wan Kenobi content, which we put out our top 5 favorite Obi-Wan Kenobi moments last Friday. You'll want to check out that video as well as a trailer reaction to the new trailer last week. And we'll have more and more Obi-Wan content throughout the month. So you're going to want to stick around to Star Wars Lads for everything Obi-Wan Kenobi. So if you've seen my other versions of these videos, it was either the top 10 characters who could be in the Bad Batch Season 2 or the top 10 characters who could be in the Book of Boba Fett. This video, I'm not going to be ranking them in order of characters I want to see most and characters I want to see least. Today, I'm just going to give you over 50 characters that I think could be in this show or have a possibility of being in the show, and give you my opinion on whether I think they are likely to show up or not likely to show up. But any of these characters are possible. We will not be covering characters that are already confirmed, so no Darth Vader, Owen Lars, Beru Lars, Fifth Brother, Grand Inquisitor, Luke Skywalker. Any of those characters who have already been confirmed for this show are not going to be in this video. We're also only going to talk about characters who can appear in this. So we're not going to talk about characters that might be dead or might need some huge swinging cannon to actually appear. They have to be able to appear in the 9 BBY timeline that Obi-Wan Kenobi has set up for us here. So without further ado, let's get to the video. I decided to divide this list into 5 different factions, and we're going to start by talking about Jedi characters. We know that Obi-Wan Kenobi is going to show an Obi-Wan still struggling to come to grips with the fall of the Jedi and Revenge of the Sith, and searching for a new purpose for himself in the dark times of Imperial reign. During this time period, we're also most likely going to see just what being a Jedi truly means to Kenobi. We know during the 19-year gap between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope, Obi-Wan learns how to communicate with his former master Qui-Gon Jinn, who before his death had found a way to preserve his spirit beyond the Netherworld and become one with the Force. Presumably, Qui-Gon will be teaching Obi-Wan how to do the same thing as we see him able to do in A New Hope, before fully manifesting his Force ghostly form in The Empire Strikes Back. So the first character that seems to be as much of a sure bet as any to be in Obi-Wan Kenobi is Liam Neeson's Qui-Gon Jinn. And yes, I know he's said he doesn't want to be in a TV show, but the guy literally returned to voice an animated version of his character in the Clone Wars. Plus, we've heard a lot of other actors give far crazier excuses for why they won't be in an upcoming project when they're trying to cover up the fact that they really are in it. So I'm pretty sure that's what's going on here with Liam Neeson. There are also a couple of other possible Jedi characters that could make an appearance in the series. Yoda would be next most likely, in my opinion, considering he and Obi-Wan went into exile at the same time. If Obi-Wan was forced out of hiding, there is the possibility he tries to get in touch with Yoda in some way to warn him about the Inquisitors or Darth Vader. An appearance by Ahsoka Tano has also been thrown around a lot over the lead up to the show, considering her recent appearances in The Mandalorian and the Book of Boba Fett. However, if we see Ahsoka, I don't think it will be Rosario Dawson's version of the character. If the rumors about flashbacks to the Clone Wars with Hayden Christensen as Anakin Skywalker are to be believed, I think it's far more likely and far less distracting for the show's narrative to feature Ahsoka briefly in one of those flashbacks, rather than in the series' main 9 BBY timeline. There are a couple of other names that have been mentioned in this section as possibilities, but I think they are incredibly unlikely. Cal Kestis, Cere Junda, or any other Jedi Fallen Order character could be a possibility because the first game's 14 BBY timeline could intersect with Obi-Wan Kenobi's setting 5 years later. I don't think this will be the case though, firstly because that would spoil whether the characters from the game survive until 9 BBY, which would ruin some of the stakes in future games' possible narratives, and secondly, I don't think a series focused on one character in particular whose only real connection to anyone from Jedi Fallen Order is that he's also a Jedi lends itself to a significant weight behind any JFO character's appearance. The Bad Batch seems like a much more likely and far more suitable destination for JFO characters to appear. The final character I wanted to mention in this section, mainly because I keep seeing his name everywhere online, is Mace Windu. As of now, Mace Windu is still canonically dead, and I don't think this show has the time or the right story to explain how and why Mace survived. Anything is possible, but I'd be seriously concerned about the show's quality if they decided to add a character as big as Mace Windu to its already huge narrative. We've known for a while now that the Empire was going to be the main antagonistic faction in Obi-Wan Kenobi, with Darth Vader serving as the show's top-billed antagonist. Vader's Inquisitors also seem to get major play in this series, with characters like the Grand Inquisitor and the Fifth Brother being the latest characters confirmed to make the jump from animation to live action. There are a ton of other Imperials who could also possibly make appearances in this series, both in cameos or in substantial roles. First and most likely cameo would be Emperor Palpatine himself. With Vader's large presence in the series, it would make a lot of sense for the Emperor to make an appearance in order to help goad his apprentice's bloodlust for revenge. Continuing in the same vein of the dark side users, we can also look at the other members of the Inquisitorius who could show up. The Seventh Sister is the female Inquisitor who worked alongside the Fifth Brother in Rebels. The Eighth Brother was also an Inquisitor from Rebels who worked with the Fifth Brother and Seventh Sister, but played a much smaller role. And finally, the Ninth Sister, who made an appearance in Jedi Fallen Order and Darth Vader Dark Lord of the Sith comic series, who presumably could still be alive after being force-pushed into the Kashyyyk Forest by Cal Kestis. All of these Inquisitors are definitely possible, but they seem like overkill for a show that already features the likes of Vader and at least 3 other Inquisitors. Speaking of Vader, we know from the concept art that the show will be featuring scenes in Vader's castle on Mustafar. This makes an appearance by Vinay, Vader's loyal attendant, probable at some point in the series. There are also a whole slew of Imperial officers who fit canonically into this timeline. Characters like Wilf Tarkin, Wolf Yaloran, Thrawn, Firmus Piet, Kendall Ozzel, Cassio Tag, Conan Motti, Maximilian Veers, Arenda Price, Gable Carius, Alexander Callis, Orson Krennic, or any other number of notable Imperial officers are also possibilities for this show. Another character that a lot of fans have been wanting to see in a story about Obi-Wan post-Revenge of the Sith for a while now is Commander Cody. Cody would make a fascinating antagonist in a story taking place immediately after Revenge of the Sith. His loyalty and friendship with Kenobi would be really neat to play with in contrast with his dogmatic nature and the effects of the Order 66 inhibitor chips. With that being said, I don't see any clone troopers really making an appearance in this series. Its events are about 10 years removed from the Bad Batch, which I believe will wrap up the story of the clones during the Dark Times, and most likely will conclude around 15 to 14 BBY at the latest. So even though we know other clones like Rex, Wolf, and Gregor are still alive in 9 BBY, it doesn't seem likely they'll appear either. The Rebellion is the faction fans are still speculating how big of a role it will actually have in Obi-Wan Kenobi. So far from the trailers and concept art, there's little evidence that there will be much Rebel activity at all in this show, and that makes sense for the time period. We know from Star Wars Rebels that until 5 to 4 BBY, there were no concrete alliances amongst rebels against the Empire. Instead, there were a large variety of different factions rebelling in different ways across the galaxy. In the political sphere, Bail Organa and Mon Mothma did what they could in the Imperial Senate to pass legislation that would help those oppressed by the Empire, while secretly supporting rebel activity. Both characters could logically make appearances in Obi-Wan Kenobi, but to me, Bail Organa is the most likely rebel figure who could appear in the series. As a trusted ally and one of only 3 people in the galaxy that knows the location of both of Vader's children, I could see Obi-Wan turning toward Bail for help while he flees from Imperial forces. This could also lead to a more cameo-like appearance from Leia Organa or Brea Organa, but I don't think it should be much more than that considering Leia isn't aware of her parents' involvement with the rebellion until the events of the novel Leia, Princess of Alderaan, which takes place 6 years after the show in 3 BBY. Andor will be the next live-action Star Wars series on Disney Plus after Obi-Wan Kenobi, and speculation about an appearance from Diego Luna's titular character Cassian Andor in this series has been prevalent. While I think a Cassian appearance in the series would be possible, it would only work in a story context that the Rebellion plays a much larger role than it initially appears they are going to play. Still, I could see Cassian playing the role of guy who takes Obi-Wan to a planet he needs to go to if they really wanted to force him into the show. K2SO would not be likely, however, because until Andor retcons it, Rogue One, Cassian and K2 Special Number 1 takes place around 2 BBY and tells the story of how the two would-be friends met. Another rebel who could appear in the series because he's been appearing in everything lately is Saw Gerrera. Saw's partisans were active during 9 BBY, and amongst their ranks would be a 12-year-old Jyn Erso who could also make an appearance. You might also be wondering about the possibility of getting some more animated characters from Star Wars Rebels making their first live-action appearances in this series, such as Kanan Jarrus and Hera Syndulla. Again, this could be possible even if unlikely. The novel A New Dawn, which details how Kanan and Hera first met, takes place 2 years prior to the series in 11 BBY. We're still unsure exactly when Zeb Aurelios joined Kanan, Hera, and Chopper in the Spectres, but he would seem a bit more likely to be a part of the crew around 9 BBY than Sabine Wren would, who was 12 years old at the time of Obi-Wan Kenobi. This is one of the tougher categories of characters to predict because there are so many obscure Tatooine residents with small roles in a variety of Star Wars media who could all logically fit here. We also still don't know how much of this series is truly going to be spent on Tatooine in order to fit all of these characters in, even for quick cameos. We'll start with the top dog himself, though, Jabba the Hutt, who we see partnering with the Empire at times throughout the original trilogy timeline. Would the Imperials need to at least communicate with him at some point in the series regarding what seems to be an occupation of one of Tatooine's cities by the Inquisitors during their search for Obi-Wan? A Jabba appearance could lead to a number of underworld characters popping up for cameos in this series, though. Characters like Bib Fortuna, EV-9D9, 8D8, and Max Rebo come to mind because of their recent appearances in The Mandalorian and the Book of Boba Fett. Of course, I'd also love to see some of the background characters, like those from Chalmun's Mos Eisley Cantina and Jabba's Palace, make appearances in the show as well. Wuher the Bartender, Figrin Dan and the Modal Nodes, Saelt Murray, Malakili the Rancor Keeper, Ifant Mod, Shada Dukal, Boshik, Ja Yauza, and any other characters they'd want to throw at us would be welcome. Heck, they might as well give us a Mosap Benit appearance while they're at it. If you aren't familiar with that character, he serves as Jabba's accountant and is actually featured in the Legends novel Kenobi. Speaking of Kenobi by John Jackson Miller, which I'm going to go further into in my How to Adapt Kenobi into Canon video coming out in 2 weeks, I wanted to mention a few characters from that book that I'd love to see at least name dropped in this show, even though the story of this series is going to be extremely different from the stories of that novel. The novel features 2 key protagonists besides Obi-Wan, a local storekeeper named Annaline Caldwell, who forms a personal relationship with Obi-Wan in the novel, and the vigilante/entrepreneur Orn Galt, who established the Settlers' Call Fund in order to protect the residents of the Pika Oasis near Danar's claim from Tusken Raiders. I don't think the story of the series lends itself to these characters having any real involvement in the show, but it'd be nice if they were at least mentioned. I also doubt Obi-Wan Kenobi features anything from the Tusken Raiders because they were so prevalently used in the Book of Boba Fett, but if they were to feature any Tuskens, they might as well feature the female Tusken warrior Ayark, who also is featured heavily in Kenobi. It's also possible we see the Tusken tribe from the Book of Boba Fett if they wanted to connect those 2 shows further. The final category of characters I want to discuss in this video was the one I thought would be least prevalent in this story until we got our second trailer last week. In that trailer, our newest Inquisitor, Reva, mentions that she wants every lowlife and bounty hunter to squeeze Obi-Wan, apparently in an attempt to trap him for the Inquisitors. When you throw bounty hunters into the mix, especially Tatooine bounty hunters, there are a ton of names that could come up. If Jabba is in the series, look for possible appearances from the likes of Greedo or even Boba Fett. In the trailer, we also get confirmation of an appearance by 4LOM, and where 4LOM goes, Zuckuss usually isn't too far behind. I would be really surprised if we don't at least get an action scene featuring the Gand bounty hunter teaming up with his longtime partner. If 4LOM and Zuckuss are appearing, that means we also can't rule out appearances from other famous original trilogy bounty hunters like Bossk, Dengar, and IG-88. Another bounty hunter that could make a lot of sense for this time period, and is very possible considering the full live-action costume for this character has already been created for the Book of Boba Fett, is Cad Bane. If we wanted to continue the trend of bounty hunters from the live-action Disney Plus series that preceded this one appearing in Obi-Wan Kenobi, maybe he will be chased by Black Chrysanthemum or Fennec Shand. With Obi-Wan Kenobi's apparent strong connection to the world of the Star Wars animated series, we also can't rule out appearances by popular Clone Wars and Rebels bounty hunters like Imbo, Sugi, C-21 Highsinger, Latz Razi, or Serapis, just to name a few. They could even bring back Dirge now that he's been made canon in Dr. Aphra, for a first canonically epic fight scene with Obi-Wan. Out of all these characters, I think Zuckuss is by far the most likely candidate to make an appearance, but I have a feeling at least a couple of these will be making a cameo appearance at some point. Again, my biggest fear if too many of the big name characters show up is that it becomes distracting and takes away from the story which should be focused on Obi-Wan. But if done right and not ceremoniously, even a cameo by Cad Bane or Boba Fett could still feel normal because it fits canonically into the timeline. Well, there you have it, over 50 characters that could appear in Obi-Wan Kenobi when it starts at the end of the month. Let me know down below if you thought I missed any characters that you think should appear in the show or could appear in the show. There are a ton out there, like I said, especially for the bounty hunters, Rebels, Empire, and Tatooine Residents sections, so I wasn't able to cover everyone, but I mentioned a lot of the ones I'd like to see in it. Also, please like the video if you haven't subscribed to the channel for Star Wars content every day of the week. Check out our shorts and other videos that are coming out throughout the week. And stay tuned for continued Obi-Wan content. We have a tier list about Obi-Wan coming at the end of the week. And if you haven't checked out last week's video where we talked about our top 5 favorite Obi-Wan Kenobi moments, you'll want to check that video out as well. So again, thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you all next time.